All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. On today's episode, we have a returning guest, Carol. How you doing, man?
I'm well, thank you. How are
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I'm doing really good. Like we were talking about earlier, weather over here is pretty good, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, the same here.
Nice, Carol. I have been having conversations with therapists who are marriage and family therapists, or even social workers that have taken some extra training to be able to do family and couples therapy. And, I think a general consensus is that the preparation is not the best. Not saying it's not good. I'm just saying it could be better.
Mhm.
And there's no fault of the schools or anything. There's just a lot when working with
Mhm.
a family or a couple. I mean, you have more than one person in the room. It
Yeah,
could be tough,
yeah.
to work with both of them. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I disagree with you a little bit there out of the starting gate. I do fault some of the programs for not, I do think it's on them. I mean, if they're going to train us to do, I'm kind of more thinking about marriage and couples, right? Like,
Mhm.
if we're going to do couples work, I think they need to have at least two dedicated courses on specifically working with couples, techniques, how to handle what we encounter. I'm sure you know what I mean there.
Mhm.
Um, and they don't. I mean, mine didn't. I had
Mhm.
to, I mean, maybe there were three or four classes within another class that were devoted to some of that,
Yeah.
but not much. And I really
Mhm.
had to seek training outside of my graduate training to understand how to do it well. And then those trainings and seminars and webinars didn't really do it. And so I had to continue it. And then I had to learn myself,
Mm.
my own readings, my own experience, my own efforts to find solid psychologists, trained researchers who had written books and had seminars and all sorts of things where I learned how to do it better than ever. And
Mm.
I'm still learning. I mean, I'll never be finished learning how to be in a marriage well and to coach and teach others how to be in a marriage well.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
never stop learning.
yeah, that's so interesting because, when I finished my master's program, right, I didn't feel like a master. I was
Mhm.
like, I didn't feel
Mhm.
like I had mastered, at least, what I went to school for. And, yeah, it's so interesting because there's so many gaps, and there's a part of me that's like, well, that's what supervision is for. And then you got to get extra hours to get licensed by the board. But even then, it's like, there's gaps. You saw extra training. What did you notice that was missing in your own, training that you're like, "I need training for this one particular piece." Like, can you kinda outline some of those things?
Well, I think it was training for all the pieces.
Mm.
And so I'll get to your question, but
Yeah.
I started out in clinics and mental health agencies and things where they work you
Mhm.
to death.
Mhm.
The expectations of how many clients you have to see to make them money is outlandish.
Mm.
But nonetheless, embedded in that were plenty of families and couples, and I'll just hone in on couples.
Mhm.
Um, and so that trial by fire really taught me a lot of, okay, now I know, now after a year or two in clinic work, community mental health work, now I know what I didn't know. I didn't
Mm.
know what I didn't know before. Now that I've had some experience here being confused and overwhelmed and lacking confidence, now I know what I need to search for.
Mhm.
And that was any, and these were few and far between back then because I graduated in 1990. Um, Back in the early 90s, it was few and far between to find a webinar. Well, there weren't webinars. What am I saying? A seminar, like a live. You go in person and you listen to someone in the front of the room. And what was missing was live demonstrations of
Mm,
how to do couples work with real couples, or at least people that were playing a real couple as close as to it as they could get.
yeah.
Who wants to go up there and do that, right? But I searched out a lot of, I would say in the past 5 years, since webinars and live things were big, became big,
Yeah.
the Gottmans were great. Harville Hendricks, anything by him, um, and some others. I can't recall the name off the top of my head, but just trainers who were willing to dig into deep, hard things. Like, well, what do you do when the couple's at a standstill? What do you do in the session when they're at each other's throats? What do you do when they're yelling at each other and one gets up and leaves the room?
Mhm.
What do
Yeah.
you do when they're good people, but they're treating each other like dogs, worse
Mhm.
than dogs? What do you do when there's been an affair or multiple affairs and the person who was faithful is trying to rebuild the marriage and forgive that person, but that person doesn't understand how to rebuild trust?
Mhm.
And so I remember, being a fresh out of graduate school, 24, maybe 23. I'm almost 60 now. And I just had no idea. There, nothing in my training other than what I sought out, and books, plenty of books.
Mhm.
A good one is After the Affair. That's a good one for the issue of how to help couples rebuild trust. Um, but yeah, reading books. I mean, back then I remember reading a lot of books. Um, there was almost no discussion of how to help a couple rebuild trust after affairs. I
Mm.
mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's, I would say all the couples, I shouldn't say all, but most of the couples I've worked with where in their marriage there had been unfaithfulness would probably be 50% of those couples.
Wow.
And so the person that had the affair or affairs, they don't they don't want to hear what they have to do to rebuild trust. That's the
Mhm.
last thing they want to hear. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
shit. They don't want to hear it. And
Mhm.
so then how to handle that? Some do. Some are like, okay, I get it. I'm going to work on that. And they're all up for it.
Yeah.
But so many are, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to give them my cell phone. I'm
Yeah.
entitled to privacy.
Mhm.
And so then you have to pick sides. Good marriage a good marriage therapist will choose sides in a very, um, what do you call it? Like weighty, tense session like that. And
Mm.
if they're not ready for that, they're not ready to rebuild trust.
Yeah. So, Carol, oh, man, so many threads that we can pull on.
Mhm.
I like to start with what you said most recently, and that is choosing sides. How does a therapist choose sides in an ethical way that kind of helps the couple get out of that?
That's the $64,000 question.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've perfected that, Rich. But the way I do it, or the way I've read to do it and been trained to do it so far, is to use logic and evidence. Is there evidence that one of the persons in the relationship is causing more of the problems than the other? Is there more evidence that one of the people, and again, this can bounce back and forth.
Mhm.
One day we're looking at, Bob's stuff, and the next time we're looking at Mary's stuff, right?
Mhm.
Um, but evidence, we look at evidence. Is
Yeah.
there evidence that someone in this relationship needs to stop what they're doing that isn't working
Mhm.
and start doing something new that would likely work better?
Yeah.
And so we have to hone in on that. If we don't hone in on it, we're missing huge pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. And so when I hear you say choosing sides, what kind of comes to my mind is championing that particular client's cause in the moment, whatever that topic
Mm.
may be. Is that kind of how does that land for you?
Well, I mean, it's more about, I think, choosing sides. I wouldn't choose a side
Mhm.
for the whole session,
Got
every session, right? We
it. Mhm.
look at, well, what are you discussing?
Mhm.
What are the issues? What's going well? What are the problems? And what do you both believe are causing these problems?
Mhm.
And let's say Mary comes and says, well, Bob's cheating. And I know I'm honing in on that, but for lack of a better example at the moment, I'm just
Mhm.
going to use
Yeah.
it. Bob's cheating is causing problems. Well, is there evidence that Bob's cheating causes problems? Yeah. So
Mhm.
Bob, are you willing to look at what's going on? Let's get into your issues. What happened in your childhood? Let's get into the thick of things. And
Mhm.
if Bob's not ready for that, it's not going to work.
Mhm. Yeah. So in that scenario with Bob and Mary, in that case, the therapist is choosing sides by kind of joining with Mary and
Mhm.
inviting Bob
Mhm.
to do certain
Mhm.
things to
Mhm.
is that
Yeah.
kind of okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yes. And a healthy egoed Bob can do it. He can
Mhm,
say, I don't want to lose my wife. I've
mhm,
screwed up. I want to keep her in my life. And I'm willing to do anything it takes to rebuild the trust she lost for me.
yeah,
And so it's asking Bob to, or Mary, whoever, to look at what is it going to take to rebuild trust in your marriage. What can you do to give your partner, spouse, what they are asking for? And then that spouse has to know what they're asking for. Here's what I want, in order to feel trusting of you again.
mhm, yeah,
And a healthy egoed person can do that. They can say, okay, I'll do it. I'm going to do it.
yeah,
An unhealthy, weaker egoed person sometimes will get up and leave the room. They're not ready. Or they
mhm,
stay and they want to get ready, and it takes more work to get that person ready to sit with that pain and be willing to give their partner what that partner needs to begin to trust them again.
mhm,
So it'll
yeah,
feel like choosing sides, but really what it is helping the couple grow.
yeah,
It'll feel like I'm choosing, or the therapist is picking a side.
right, yeah,
But we don't have any choice.
yeah, and
There's
it's so interesting because it almost sounds to me like the therapist is choosing, um, a and I can't find the right word, it's not coming to me, but, like, the center, and the center is a united relationship, a relationship where they're connected and they're like moving towards their goal. And so the therapist is positioning themselves in that center,
Mhm.
choosing whatever that center is in the moment, whether it's with Bob or Mary, whatever's going to accomplish their goal is the center. And so then you're choosing the side that is the center and inviting the other person to come to join you in the center. That's the
Mhm.
way I'm kind of
Yeah,
thinking of what you're
I
saying.
love that. I love that visual analogy. Yeah.
Got it, got it.
Yeah.
Um, that's interesting. Carol, I wanna go back to, what you said earlier about schools not teaching us, to deal like, in this case, you spoke about the affairs, like the topic of
Mhm.
affairs,
Mhm.
and I think that's amazing because there are some pretty major themes that are in therapy. One of them is affairs, right? I mean,
Mhm.
the list of things that people come to therapy for is seemingly endless, but there are some big ones that are pretty common, affairs being one of them. And I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense that maybe there would be value in students getting exposure to some of these themes, not just the models like narrative therapy and CBT and all these things, but like how do you deal with what happens in the room when the clients are dealing with these three very common, issues that you will likely see in your therapy practice. You know what I mean? What are your
Right.
thoughts on that?
Oh, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Mm,
I mean, major themes were, I mean, maybe a little bit discussed, but not having a class on the techniques for helping couples, just couples,
mm,
like just one class for God's sakes, right?
mhm,
One class on helping couples deal with those major themes that are most likely to surface in couples counseling:
mm,
infidelity, money, parenting,
mhm,
sex,
mhm. Yeah, chores for sure. Like the laundry list of
division of
chores.
labor. Absolutely. Love it.
Mhm,
Yep.
mhm.
Yep. That's another big one.
Yeah,
Sex, parenting, division of labor, finances, and infidelity. Those are the major ones.
yeah. So
And
so
I might say in-laws, but that, not all couples have in-laws.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Sometimes they're not married and don't worry about their other partner's
Mhm.
parents.
Yeah. Why do you think that schools focus a lot more on frameworks and models like CBT? You know, you like for example, like when I went to school, it was like here are the 12, the big 12, whatever, whoever picked them, whatever, they were just presented to us. And the instructions were pick one and you're going to focus on mastering this one and then you're
Hmm.
gonna do your capstone on it. And so when you're working with clients, every client fits into that model. So like I chose narrative therapy. And so now because of the school and what I'm instructed to do, I got to build my skill set of narrative and apply it to everybody, which it was tough. It really was tough, you know?
I
And so
was never trained that way. Never.
oh
Mm-mm,
wow.
mm-mm. I was
Did
never. So I went to graduate school between 88 and 90,
mhm,
1988 and 1990.
mhm,
And small rural state college in the mountains of Maryland. Good program. It had a very good reputation, but they were much more, and it was 2 years. 2 years, that's it. And then when we graduated, we weren't licensure ready. I remember getting a call from the licensure board in Maryland saying, "Oh, you're lacking these 4 courses. Your program didn't set you licensure ready to apply." I had to go back again and take 4 more classes in each of these categories.
mhm.
And I remember just crying, thinking, what?
Wow.
Anyway, so it was a good, solid program for
Mhm,
individual counseling of
mhm.
adults.
Yeah.
That's what it was good for. And it perfected that. It did. It did.
Mhm,
But I was unprepared for children, teenagers, and couples.
mhm,
They did. I took a family therapy course. Did do that. So I felt pretty ready for that.
mhm.
But couples, just of itself, no.
Yeah.
And so they were just to answer to you, they were much more about a broader look.
Mhm.
Like they called it multimodal therapy, and
Mm,
the general. They purported having a general good knowledge base of multimodal techniques, CBT, gosh, what was even popular about, psychodynamic,
mm,
psychoanalytical, the person-centered, um, reality therapy was a big one back then. Reality therapy,
reality, okay.
and you rarely hear it now about it
Mhm.
now.
Yeah. Why do you think just real quick, why do you think it, like, models go out of favor? Like, what do you think just new ones pop up or we find better things? What are your thoughts on that?
If you want, well, I'm sure you do want my honest, jaded opinion. Money.
Yes.
It's all about money. Someone comes up with a new term and they're like, "Oh, this sounds good, this new terminology.
Mhm,
Um, eh, I'll write a book about that and I'll come up with a therapy model about that."
mhm.
And yes, some of them are quite valuable. They are. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that it's, for example, family systems.
Mhm,
I forgot the name of the guy that developed it. Family systems, that was never taught back in the late 80s.
mhm.
It was The principles were similar to something else, like shadow work, Carl Jung's shadow work. The principles were similar to that, but he came up with a new set of, and it's valuable. It's not invaluable. It's quite handy,
Mhm.
but it creates this ability for someone to make money on that book writing and that new terminology, and then they do research on it. Look, I did research, it works.
Mhm.
Great, but we it's handy, great, I like it. But I could get similar results using something from the late 80s that just had a different name.
Mm.
So that's my jaded take on it. Could I be wrong? Sure. There could be some other reason, I don't know.
Wow, and as you said that, it reminded me of what Dr. Scott Miller wrote in his book Escape from Babel, and he talks about how each one of these modalities essentially is its own kind of brand, and each one of these brands, right? Because every product and service is, by definition, it has a brand, right? Like
Yeah,
it's meant to attract a certain buyer,
totally,
and
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he calls therapists the new therapists. He considers them to be consumer clinicians, or it's like, hey, do you want to increase your competency? Just buy this one book. Oh, check this thing out. Add this to your repertoire. And it's
Mhm.
we've
Yeah.
become the whole consumer marketplace has spilled over into therapy, and now we're just buying and buying and buying.
Mhm.
Whew, I could go down that rabbit hole, but I am with you when you
Yeah.
talk about the money piece. It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and again, I don't want to I don't want to sound as if I don't appreciate what those amazing authors, psychologists, researchers, and then they write a book. I don't want to downplay the use of those books and techniques and
Yeah.
new ways of wording it.
Mhm.
But it gets overwhelming. And
Yeah.
much of it could have been lumped into something we did learn in the 70s, 80s, 90s. To have a new framework around it and maybe a set of ways to implement all of that, it is helpful. It is, but
Mhm.
it gets so convoluted and watered down. I'm trying to
Mm.
think of a good example, and it's escaping me. DBT.
Mhm.
DBT, I think, is just it can be accomplished using CBT. Like, we didn't need dialectical behavior therapy model and wordage
Mhm.
to implement CBT in a similar way.
Yeah.
I don't.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm jaded too much. I'm old and jaded. I don't know.
No, I get it. And it's interesting because like as a new student, or a new therapist entering the field, it's like it's like if I enter the field in 2026, I'm only really getting exposed to like what, like maybe the last 10, 15 years in the form of a few models. Like in my case, right? It was like, here's 10 models, 12 models to pick from. But what about all the other ones? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Those are all gone to memory. And I imagine that most of the students that are in my cohort, so to speak, in my era, like they're getting something that is similar to what I experienced, like
Hmm.
you pick one of these 10 or 12, or you're just kind of assigned one and told to do the thing, and so it's like, then what happened to all the research and great books and stuff from the past? That all just
Yes,
kind of gets forgotten about, and then the new
I
things are
know.
coming, you know what I mean? It's like this weird kind of,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And yeah, that's so interesting. I wanted to go back to what you talked about as far as the demos. And I think that's a great point, that I wish I could have seen live demos of like somebody doing actual couples work.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because when, there's what's that website? Psychology.net or something like that. There's a website out there where they have like the founders of some of these big models, and they're doing therapy, right? It's like
Like the
Salvador.
Gottmans. The
Yeah,
Gottmans.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the Gottmans, or they'll have like Salvador Minuchin back in the day, and he's doing like structured family
Yeah.
therapy, and he's
Yeah.
sitting in, right? And
Uh-huh.
then you're watching him and you're like, wow, dude, like that's crazy. Like, look at him just doing the thing, right? And
Hmm.
these titans that are just applying their craft and they get quick results. and it's inspiring, it's motivating. And at the same time, I'm like, and Salvador Minuchin's been doing this for like 30, 40 years, right? Like he wrote like 5 books. Like I wish what I'm trying to say is I wish I could have seen regular therapists, non-celebrity therapists just doing the thing, because then,
Yeah.
it could be, there's something to be said about that. When you see the founder of a whole model applying it, it's different than when you see a person who learned it as a student and then they're like normal, if that's the right word, applying that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I completely agree.
Mm.
One of the best live examples of doing any kind of couples work I did experience, I would say maybe it was the mid to late 90s, and it was Harville Hendrix and his wife. And they were on a stage doing these things, doing couples work. And one of the things they did was they role modeled being a couple. And I wish I remember when and the date and all this stuff, but they role modeled being a couple engaging in healthy communication while disagreeing and kind of fighting. But I maybe a better term would be arguing. So they were demonstrating that they were having an argument on stage and how to have a healthy argument with one another while preserving respect and coming to some sort of agreement.
Yeah.
And it was great. Harville Hendrix and his wife, I haven't seen them do anything lately. And so those live demonstrations, it's such a great thing because it's in real time. And then people can kind of raise their hand and ask questions after, like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And then they also had, Harville alone had a couple on, and they sat face to face in chairs. And he was obviously the therapist, and he did a live demo of imago therapy.
Oh yeah, I've heard
That
of
more of
that.
like a emotionally focused imago, getting into their childhoods and their feelings and how all those emotions jump up and land in their marriage or their relationship and take place, and just they're replaying childhood events.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
What so if there's a new clinician entering the field, what would you recommend that they either do or maybe seek out? Any good books? Like what's maybe like a good starting point for somebody to orient themselves in the world of couples therapy?
Well, I think just, what I've been mentioning is to take in as many live demos,
Mhm,
video, in person as you can,
mhm.
with any reputable couples therapist, Harville Hendrix, John Gottman. I'm sure there's another set of them that I'm not even aware of. Um, and just keep it on repeat.
Mm,
And then schedule couples clients and be initiated by fire.
yeah.
Just dive right in and
Mhm,
try to apply what you learn,
yeah. You
and
know,
not and work on not being afraid of
oh,
their reactions, right? I mean, and again, we do all this gently and we don't do all of it respectfully and kindly, but in so many instances, that may not make a difference. You
yeah.
could be as kind as Mother Teresa in some of these sessions, and it's if you get a weak egoed person, they will be upset and they
Mhm.
will push back and they will or leave, walk out.
Yeah. Wow. Um, yeah, that's so interesting because it reminds me of something I heard a while ago that's like we don't really know what's going to work for the client, and I think I forgot who it was, but they said something like, they were saying that they were really proud of themselves for their clinical insight and their reframes and all the great techniques that they were getting proficient at applying. And that when they asked the client afterwards, what was it about therapy that they remember? It was something that had nothing to do with that. It was like they came in one day, they were sad, they were upset, and then the clinician asked if they wanted a cup of water. And in that moment, the client was like, "Oh my God, they care for me," like
Mm.
grab the water. They remember that. And that was like, oh, I remember that. Like the client remembers that so vividly, and it's just so interesting because going back to what you're saying is like, we don't really know, but I wanted to get back to this idea of repeat. Why should a clinician have those things on repeat?
Well, I don't think I mean like the same exact
Mhm,
thing, but have it on repeat that we're going to take in educational material, videos,
mhm,
seminars, books on repeat so that we're
mhm.
freshening up our knowledge,
Yeah.
right? As best we can. Because what is both great, I think, and not so great is that, like we were saying earlier in this podcast, that there's always new books, there's always new terminologies, there's
Mhm.
always a new somebody coming out with the latest awareness that we should take in, right? Like
Yeah.
Mel Robbins theory, right? Mel Robbins let them theory.
Mhm,
That's a good one, right?
mhm,
It's great. She's awesome. I love her podcasts. But the let them theory, as great as it is new. So that's the new thing. And people are going to read it. Oh, did you read the let them theory? Well,
mhm,
there's nothing that new in there. I mean,
mhm.
some of it's new, but not much. I mean, it's just new ways of rephrasing the idea that we can't change other people
Yeah.
and we're going to have to let them be who they are.
Mhm,
And we're going to have to let them engage in bad behavior if they so choose. We can't make them be a different person.
mhm.
And so but that concept's been around for a very long time,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
for sure. Mhm,
But I love how she rewords it and she reframes it and she has different terminology and people see it and they buy it and they learn. And that's awesome. That part is
mhm,
great.
mhm.
But I think that's what I mean. Just, kind of have it on repeat that we're looking for new information. And some of it may be repetitive, but if it helps us frame it in a way that's kind of new and fresh, and the young people seeking our services are into that too,
Yeah.
then we're kind of keeping up with the times. And myself, I have to be very aware of that.
Mm.
You're much younger, you're in the times. I'm older and I've got to try to keep up with the times, and that's a struggle. It's a struggle sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. It's funny you say that because, when I was in school, I remember, um, I made, like a sheet, and on that sheet, I would write down like like takeaways from each one of those things. And then what I would do before I would start my sessions is like open up my binder and look at those notes and just be like, okay, what's the next intervention? What's the next thing? Like just like one or two phrases, you know what I mean, in
Yeah,
order. And then
yeah,
so I had like early phase, middle phase, late phase of whatever model I was using. In that
yeah,
case, narrative
yeah,
therapy. But like,
yeah.
it's so funny that you say that because it's so true that getting your reps in, so to speak, really, because I did it a few times, but there was no way I was remembering all that, and
Mhm,
especially in
mhm,
the session with clients, like
mhm,
real time live,
mhm,
and so there is a lot to be said about getting your reps in, a lot of reps to really kind of
mhm,
soak in
mhm.
those models.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, good therapy is an art form. I mean, it really, it's an art. It's an art.
Yeah.
Uh, And our programs don't tend to, I'm sure there's some that do,
Mhm.
but I think most don't tend to prepare us well enough.
Mm.
They prepare us well in some aspects, but in so much of what we're faced with, there's very little to no preparation. And I remember working at a clinic in West Virginia, Appalachia, poor folks coming in there. Um, and some of the parents were just so unprepared for how to be parents. And I
Mhm.
remember, this one woman, she was a single mother and she brought her toddler in, just a toddler. Well, I had no kids yet. I had no kids, was not yet a mother. I was probably 24, didn't have my own son till I was 25. There was no parenting techniques course given.
Hmm.
And I was just thrown right in because it's a clinic and you just thrown right in.
Hmm.
And I hope I helped her some. I doubt it. But you
Yeah.
know what? I think just listening to her and caring about her and giving her empathy and compassion, that's what I could
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
And I tried the best I could when I went home, found some book on rewards and consequences for toddlers or something, and tried to bring that to her the next day, the next session. Just do the best I can. And that's how I learned.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And and I appreciate your honesty about the being open to the possibility that maybe you didn't help her, and that's okay. Like maybe you held her stable until she could find the next clinician or the next source of relief, and there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that either. I think there was a lot of pressure to try to make progress as clinicians, and I'll be honest, there have been times when I'm like, I gotta make some movement here. Like we've been stuck for a couple, you know what I mean? Like just like
Mhm.
that, maybe like
Yeah.
self-imposed pressure to just do the right thing. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
Um,
I totally agree. And I also think our schooling, I mean, they did some of this, but I think our, the graduate schooling tends to focus, as you said, on what do you call it? Modality teaching,
mm,
and not as much on building rapport and having that connection, and that therapeutic relationship in and of itself launches many people forward. And again, I'm speaking individually,
yeah.
right? And I think
Mhm.
that may have been where my program did excel at teaching us to build that rapport and to understand
Mm,
that connection and that therapeutic relationship in and of itself will help the person grow and learn and change the way they
wow.
want to change.
Yeah, that's so cool because I never thought about it that way. It's like they say that the therapeutic alliance or the relationship is like the number one factor
Mhm.
of that
Mhm.
determines success. And it's crazy because I don't remember spending a whole lot of time in that. Like, how
Mhm.
do you do that?
Mhm.
And now I'm thinking like maybe there is something to be said about going and doing those networking events where like you're just practicing talking to people and like building
Mhm.
rapport that way.
Mhm.
So yeah, how do we build that skill of building a good therapeutic alliance? Yeah, that's
Well, and that's
wow.
a good point because
Mhm.
that's what helps couples stay in couples therapy
Mm,
when they've got a fairly directive counselor that's going to point things out when needed,
mhm,
but that alliance, that rapport, that relationship was built in the
mhm,
initial sessions. And
mhm.
so the when that's built, then the likelihood is the person that doesn't want to be there the most won't
Yeah.
leave and won't bow out. They'll
Mm,
stay, they'll remain and work, right? Because
yeah.
they trust me, I hope, to care. That it's about caring about their progress and their ongoing work as humans. That it's not just me sitting there and like, okay, I'm done, I made my money and now I'm on. No, I want to help. I really do care. And it's
Mhm.
them picking that up, I hope, that keeps them returning for the hard work, the hard work.
Yeah, for sure.
But you
Carol,
would ask something. Did I answer that? I don't know that I fully went there.
I don't remember. I think we're just having a good conversation. I want to go back to something you said earlier about how therapy is in many ways an art. And it just made me think back to a book that is actually on my shelf here. It's called The Artist's Way. And your comments kind of made me think, and it just kind of, making my imagination go about, um, do you think that clinicians as part of their program should take some kind of art class? Like, is there something to be said about taking an art, whatever that art, like an elective, where you're really understanding through your medium, whether it's pencils or paint or ceramic or whatever, like what is art? And you're like trying to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not
That's
an artist,
great.
right?
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that idea.
Mm,
Yeah, I will let you know. I've never once thought of that.
Mm.
Should clinicians in their training take at least one art course? I think 100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because think about it, right? Like, there are some times in our work, individuals or couples, both families, whatever, that we may want to, and I'm not sure if this lines up with what you meant, but this is just where my head's going,
Mhm.
where I might suggest to a person, especially a teen or a child. I don't work with children anymore, but when I did, I would ask them to draw pictures, and then I'd find a way to analyze that picture,
Mm.
and books, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I might sit there with them when I used to do in-person work, and I'm drawing a picture and they're drawing a picture next to me, and then we look at each other's pictures and we talk about what we drew.
Mhm.
And it's just so cool,
Yeah.
that art can bring us together.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Is that
Um,
what you meant, or did you have
yeah,
a different?
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's like, because I've heard that before that, um, therapy is an art, and I'm like, but we don't take art classes. Like, what is art? Like, and there's no, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so
Yeah.
interesting that this like concept of art is out
Mhm.
there, and we are the artists, and the clients come in
Mhm.
and we're doing our craft.
Mhm.
And it's like we don't really have like a deep understanding that comes from just doing the work and
Mhm.
experiencing through the medium, what art is,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
yeah, I just thought
Yeah.
it was interesting. So thank you for that, Carol, because
Yeah.
it was your
Yeah.
comment that made me think about that. And so now
Yeah.
my head's spinning.
Yeah. Well, for a little bit, I trained to be a licensed psychologist in West Virginia. You could train to be a licensed psychologist at a master's level. I don't
Oh.
know if they still do that. And I abandoned that path and eventually just went straight forward to psychotherapy. But when I was training to be a psychologist, I had to learn how to give all the assessments back then, the assessments that were popular back then.
Mhm.
And for kids and teens, well, even adults, but especially for kids, one of the tests was, one of the measures was house, tree, person. Draw a house and a tree and a person. And it was great. It was great because
Okay.
just those three things, and how the
Mhm.
child or the teen
Mhm.
or adult
Yeah.
arranged that on the paper, and what little subtle nuances they added, um, was interesting, and it could be analyzed. You could analyze it. I don't know how correct that all was, but valid. But I
Mhm.
think it was fairly valid.
Yeah.
And I just loved it.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Um, dang, Carol, I want to talk about the setting. What do
Mm.
you think about the modern therapeutic setting? Like, most people are going into an office. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just like wondering, like, should that element of therapy, like the office, be innovated? Like, I don't know. Like, if somebody's doing therapy in person, is it more effective to get outside, maybe get some sun, walk around, like maybe go to the garden? Like, and
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of constraints, financial constraints, insurance, things like that. As a business, you got to be careful that things are marked and the signs are up, and you got the yellow caution tape on the stair, or whatever. But in an ideal world where some of those things maybe are alleviated, like, is it more effective to maybe get outside of the office? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends. It
Mm.
depends on so many factors.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're looking at just strictly couples work, I would say that would be somewhat distracting, and to
Mm.
have them sit in an office or a room and face each other, or be right near each other face to face, and not be distracted
Mm.
by the weather or the birds or whatever, just be solely focused on one another, might be
Mhm.
best.
Mhm.
Could there be instances where it does work better, or very well, to
Mhm.
have them in another environment? Sure. I'm sure there are. There are always exceptions, right? Where
Mhm.
something can work out well.
Yeah.
Um, for individuals, I think it's depends on the person.
Yeah.
If it's great weather and you have a trail or a path or a sidewalk, and they want to go outside and talk while do walk and talk. That's a new thing, walk and talk.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, that's great. Or for kids, I mean, I have a grandson. His counselor, I've suggested to her to do an outside thing where they walk, because he gets rambunctious in her office. It's like,
Mm,
and I mean, I'm sure she thought about it too, but yeah, walking around, throwing the football, yeah, talking while they do something.
yeah, for sure.
That can be
Um,
very, very valuable. Sure.
yeah, thanks for that, Carol. I want to go back to what you said earlier about your encouragement to clinicians to kind of immerse themselves, so to speak, in like the extra like live trainings, maybe some like videos, um, Hendrix, etc. And there's a part of me that's like thinking about the average clinician who's just busy, like they have a life, parents,
Mhm.
kids, spouse, dog, whatever,
Mhm.
chores, they got to go to sports and they're doing their own thing. And it seems to me, and maybe this is just my experience in like a little vacuum, that people are just so busy that going that extra mile, doing that extra hour of watching a video or reading the book or whatever is it's a lot. It could be a
Mhm.
lot, it seems
Mhm.
to me. And so, what are your I mean, what would you say to the therapist that's like, "I just don't have time," like, I just don't like I want to, I really
Mhm.
do, but I don't have the time. What would you say to that?
Maybe to decide, um, how can I invest less in other areas of where it's maybe extraneous, right? And I can kind of, if you were looking at our spending, where can I cut some spending, right?
Mm,
Where can I cut some time over here and invest it over here, right? Like
mhm,
in the car, maybe. I mean, a lot of, I know I've done it where I put on a good video, podcast, some sort of material in my car and listen to it on the way somewhere. If my commute's a half hour, okay, I've just given a half an hour to listening to this audiobook or this
mm,
podcast. Yeah.
got it.
Sometimes when I'm getting ready, women like me, take a while getting ready in the morning. I'll put on something good in the morning and listen to it then. So I try to interject information like that when I'm doing something and I can listen in the background while I'm doing what I'm doing.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Or cut
S
some time in other things or on vacation. I mean, some people don't want to spend vacation listening to work related things, but
mm,
open up a good book, about how to, sticky points in couples therapy and how to navigate that. You could read it on
mm,
the beach
yeah, yeah,
or
for
listen
sure.
to it on the beach. Not that they want to, but just find it where you can.
Yeah,
Do your best. Just do your
mhm, yeah.
best.
What would you say, Carol, to the clinician that's like, they don't do that? Like, they've got to a point in their career, maybe they've been practicing for like 5 or 10 years, and they're kind of on cruise control. They're like, I'm all right. Like, I've kind
Mhm.
of learned and done enough to like just coast and just get my paycheck, do the thing, keep it moving.
Well, if
What would you
I mean,
yeah.
if they in their gut, if they honestly in their gut can be honest with themselves and say that that's producing good outcomes, good therapy outcomes,
Mm,
great, good for them, right?
yeah.
But why not always sort of be seeking to learn and
Mm,
stay fresh with our skills, right? I mean, I was probably in that mindset for a while when I was burning out, like, God, I just don't have time, and I've been there, done that, and I know enough, right? I've been doing this long enough. I know enough. I think around probably before COVID hit, I was burning out, and then COVID came, and went to telehealth, and that helped me be less burned out.
mm,
Um, and I was probably in that mindset for probably 2 years, but then I had to get really honest with myself that it would probably be better if I kept my brain focused on some intermittent knowledge and
mm,
not just assume that I had what it took to
yeah,
have good therapy outcomes all the time.
yeah. Was there a experience in particular that kind of shook you out of that mindset, that 2 year kind of burnout?
Wow. Not that I can recall
Okay,
specifically. It's
gotcha.
probably a couple.
Yeah.
Probably a couple came in person, and I realized, okay, I need to get back on the drawing
Mm,
board, read some things, go to some seminars. Yeah.
Do the thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, dang. Yeah, wow. Yeah, any other kind of closing comments for a therapist out there that's like, yeah, I do want to improve. I want to get better at couples work.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I hadn't touched on yet, and I'll be
Mhm.
brief, is
Yeah, all good. Yeah.
the and my graduate courses didn't touch on this at all. Maybe it was interwoven without speaking about it directly, but the use of spiritual approaches, a spiritual approach when accepted by the client and the couple, the use of spiritual insights into helping a couple work through their stuff,
Like what?
knowing that there's a point, what's the value, what's the reason we're doing this.
Oh,
If Bob or Mary cheated, well, why am I going to stay with Bob or Mary? Why
mhm,
not just leave? we've,
mhm.
we've been married for 10 years. I'm not putting up with this stuff. I'm not putting up with this garbage. I'm leaving.
Wow, that's so interesting. So you're suggesting, if I hear you correctly, to maybe understand some spiritual frameworks and roll them
Yeah,
into
there's
coursework?
a book called The Purpose of Marriage or The Meaning of Marriage. I can't remember. Maybe there's two books called that, um, or two different books. But the idea of, well, what would be the spiritual purpose of
Mhm.
staying together and working through it? What would be the meaning behind that? What's the value in that? Why? Why could that end up being a very good spiritual choice for our growth in staying with it and processing the issues and improving whatever it takes to improve to stay married
Yeah.
or
Wow.
in the relationship. Goldie Hawn and what's her partner's name? They're not married, but they've been together for what, 40 years or something. I can't remember. 39, I don't know, I can't remember. But no matter how long or what the auspices are that govern your relationship, whether it's marriage or just common law husband and wife, that there's a reason not to just throw it away.
Mhm. Wow, that is so interesting because dabbling in the spiritual component, like whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or anything else, like,
Mhm.
and incorporating that into therapy, I find it to be um a lot. And not that I don't want to do it, but because I feel like it would require me, if we're taking like Christianity for example, to have a pretty solid understanding of like the biblical principles and some of the teachings and stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's a whole mission. Right? I'm like,
Mhm.
going back to what I talked about earlier, Carol, it's like, do I have the time to commit to that in a way that I can honor it and really understand it and apply
Mhm.
it in real time and live with couples? Because the last thing I want to do is like, you know, memorize a few things and be like, oh, check out the book of whatever, or and like,
Mm. Yeah, I don't
and then
I
it
don't ever do that.
just
Yeah,
kind of
I
point
wouldn't.
people in that direction, because to me that feels shallow. I'm like, I want to learn it and
Yeah.
like understand it so that
Yeah.
I can really speak confidently about it in therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's tough. That's
It
tough.
is. It is. But
Mm,
but the other thing is to keep in mind that there's a clear difference between religion and spiritual awareness.
mm, mm,
So I don't ever quote the Bible to
mm,
someone. I mean, I'm not well versed on it myself. I used to be a full-fledged Catholic for a long time, and I left the Catholic Church. Some of it wasn't all my decision. There were some changes, and our church closed, and then it kind of closed. It did. It closed basically. And then that kind of started me on a cascade of, well, where am I going to go from here? And then I decided to
mm,
not go back to the Catholic Church, but just have my own spiritual Christianity that I practice.
mhm.
But just because someone's open to spiritual awarenesses as it relates to our marriage or relationship doesn't mean it's Christian, right?
Yeah.
So, right. I mean, it might be Buddhist, or they
Mhm,
might be willing to go into some other area of spirituality that
mhm,
has nothing to do with religion. And that's what
mhm,
I like to do. I like to
mhm.
to just, if they're willing and if they're
Mhm.
there and if they want to, they're open to help them learn ways of honoring their relationship, their marriage in a spiritual way, and seeing the value in staying in it and remaining together till death do us part.
Yeah, that's so good because it reminds me of the 12-step program, AA, when I was working at
Mhm.
this addictions place,
Yeah.
and like they talk about that, like I forgot one of the, forgive me for everybody that's watching this, that's an AA, and like I don't know the rules, but there's one that says like the God of your choice, or the
Yes.
God of your own making. I forgot which one that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Um, is that kind of something
Yeah.
that
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. The God of your choosing.
Hmm.
The serenity prayer,
Mm,
you know,
hmm.
and I always botch it, but something like, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change,
Yeah,
the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
yeah. Wow, that's so good.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
to apply that spirituality to
Mhm,
marriage and
mhm.
long term relationships is huge. It's so
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, and what's also crazy is I'm thinking back to my schooling, like there was no class on that for me, and even so I went to a Christian school because I was like I feel like the Christian component may be a factor into how I become a therapist. I don't know, right? I was
Mhm.
trying. This sounds like a good, and so I went there, and there was really no emphasis on the Christianity component. It was the literally, Carol, I feel like the only difference between that school and like a secular school is that in our capstone essay, it was like, how would you incorporate your own faith into your practice? Like, I feel like that was the only difference because there was no classes. And so when I hear seasoned clinicians like yourself talking about incorporating spirituality, I'm like, where can a clinician learn? Like, like where do we start with that? Any ideas?
Well, so great question. I mean, and by the way, I want to make sure, I say that I never quote the Bible
Mhm,
unless I know a verse and the person's into the Bible and right, they're
mhm,
like following it to it. And then maybe,
mhm,
but I never do that. Like
mhm,
I'm not holier than thou. I'm
mhm,
not better than anyone. I don't take that stance. Um, but my own spiritual growth as a woman is what launched me to try to understand how I can then generalize that to others and help them see. So my own growth work is what then helped me be able to, as best as I can, if they're open to it, launch and spur and facilitate someone to do their own.
mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, wow. Yeah, it's wild. The world of therapy and couples work is so interesting. There's so many elements to it. Do you recommend a particular, like, do you practice one modality, so to speak, like with your couples?
No, again, my program was very multimodal. So I use approaches as they fit for the
Got
clients and their unique issues. But I do a lot of Gottman work, the Gottman method. I
it.
apply a lot of that. Apply a lot of imago, emotionally focused. We go back and look at childhoods and really delve in and process how their childhood coping mechanisms are now replaying in this adult relationship, and it doesn't really work that well.
Mm,
And how to catch it.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, wow, Carol. Yeah, we've done an hour, and it feels like we've
Yeah,
only been at it for like 10 minutes.
I know. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for coming on the show. Any closing comments to the viewers, Carol?
Well, if for some reason someone out there would want to contact me for any kind of counseling, whether it's individual, couples, anything, my phone number, I'm just going to give you my phone number. It's 301-707-5765.
Awesome. Is there a website that maybe people can go check out, Carol?
Yeah, yeah. So just
Okay.
www.counseling@CarolLevineLCPC.com.
Got it.
They can find
Thank
me
you
on
so much, Carol.
Psychology Today therapist listings. I'm in there. Just put in, Maryland therapists in Allegheny County, and I'll probably pop up.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Carol, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you sharing your insights, and maybe we could do it again in the future. How does that sound?
Sure. Would love it. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.
Take care.